Hey everybody, we made it. Last page of the review. All right. Tab mode, no. All right, so this is a variation on the endpoint question. So if you worked the previous page of the review, this is a related page, is a good way to put it. Except if you notice, the instructions are a little bit different. And so you got to take what you know about midpoints, and you have to answer just a slightly different question. Now, the best way to attack this, I think, is to attack it through a picture again. Okay, so in other words, like I want to draw a picture that kind of represents the situation, and then we can kind of decide how we're going to attack it. So reading the question, the coordinates of point T, so we have some point T here, are going to be 2, 6, and then that stretches out to a midpoint. So it comes out here to a midpoint. And that midpoint value is going to have I'm going to call it M, a coordinate value of -1. Ooh, -1, 1. And what we actually want to do is find the coordinates of S, which is the other endpoint. And so out to here, we know there's some S value. We just don't know what the coordinates are. Okay, and so that's the situation that we have to deal with. So I'm going to approach this actually two different ways. And so if you've been watching the videos up to this point, you know that I'm a big fan of kind of like just counting. And I think we can probably attack this by counting. Allow me to demonstrate. And so consider the travel going from 2 to -1. Okay, so if it's like 2 degrees and it drops to -1 degrees, I think that you lost 3 degrees. And so if you're losing 3 degrees to get to your midpoint, then doesn't it stand to reason that you should drop 3 more degrees to get to your endpoint? Okay, and so if you start at -1 and you drop 3 degrees, you're going to be at -4. Okay, and literally it's just that easy. And so we can do the same thing for the y values. And so if we start at 6 and we end up at 1, we have lost 5 values to the midpoint. And so if we now take the midpoint and we try to get to the other endpoint, we should also lose 5 more values. And so losing 5 values, we end up with a -4. Okay? And so the answer we're looking for, the other endpoint, is going to be -4, 4. Okay? Is that the only way to attack it? No, not at all. In fact, I'm going to offer a different way to attack it in the next question, although this way should work. The midway is literally, the midpoint is literally the midway travel point between the S and the T points. And so if you know how to get to the middle, you should very well know how to get to the end. Okay? Now, let's say you're not quite catching on to that work or like that approach. There is another way. Now, this involves more calculation, but we should probably start with a picture. Okay? So here we have T to be 3, -12. Here we have the midpoint, again given to us as 2, -1. And we're asked to find the S point, which we don't know, so I'm just going to label it with an XY. So the more kind of like brute force method is to use the midpoint formula. And so we know the X value of the midpoint and the Y value of the midpoint can be calculated by taking the average of the X, so X1 plus X2 over 2, and separately Y1 plus Y2 over 2. Okay, and so what this means is we can take the information we already have and plug it into this equation. Now, for me personally, I want to separate the equation, meaning that I would like to deal with the X value of the midpoint separately than the Y value of the midpoint. And we can do that because we do not need one value to calculate the other. They are completely independent. Now, we have to be careful what we can sub in here. We actually do know the X value of the midpoint. It's right here. And so we can make this side of the equation 2. We actually do know the X1 value because it's the first value that we started with for T. And so 3 can go in for T. We don't know the X2 value because it's unknown to us. And so we can leave that as an X. And of course, divided by 2 because, well, the formula calls it for division by 2. Okay. In terms of solving this, We just have to fall back on our good algebra skills. If we want to kill a division by 2, we have to multiply by 2, both sides, of course. And so we end up with 4, because 2 times 2 is 4, is equal to 3x, because the 2's, of course, will cancel. Okay, I'm running out of room a little bit, but we're going to, of course, divide by 3, and that means our x value is going to be 4 over thirds, or about 1.3 repeating. Okay, which means this value should be, I'm going to go with 1.3 repeating. Okay, so if that worked for the x's, well, there's no reason it shouldn't work for the y's, because we do know the y value of the midpoint. It's going to be -1. We do know the first y value is going to be -12. We don't know the second y value, but that's okay. We expect there to be some variable work within equations. And of course, we'll divide by 2. We're going to attack this the same exact way in terms of algebraic stuff. We're going to kill the division by 2 by multiplying by 2. Okay, so then we're going to end up with -2 is the same thing as -12 plus y. Okay, if we add 12 to both sides, I realized I just made a mistake. I'm going to go back and fix that in a second. I bet you already caught it. Okay, so we're going to add 12 to both sides, and so we end up with what y is equal to 10. Okay, which means this y value right here should be 10. I made a mistake. Let's go back and fix it. Hopefully you picked it too. I don't mind making mistakes when I'm making videos because it just kind of shows you like that's what math is. Sometimes it's really messy. This is not the x value. If you didn't quite catch y, let me back up a little bit. It's because I made a mistake in this step. Okay, so let us redo it from here. 2 times 2 is indeed 4. But I actually end up with a 3 plus x, not a 3 times x. So when I subtract off the 3, we get x actually to be 4 minus 3, which is just 1, which means that should be a 1. Okay, apologies for that. That was confusing. I apologize. Mistakes are made sometimes, no big deal. Okay, and so the point is you can use the midpoint formula or you can use midpoint counting to find the midpoint. We can even confirm that using our counting methodology. If we go from 3 to 2, we dropped a value. We'll drop one more value. Well, you're at 1. That works out. If we're at -12 and we end up at -1, we actually went up 11 values. And if we go from -1 plus 11, well, we're going to end up right at 10. And so we can definitely confirm that this is the other endpoint. Okay? A little complicated, but nothing too outrageous. If we have a picture, this thinking actually becomes a whole lot easier. So here we have t. Sorry, the zooming in is not working super well. Here we have t, which is our original point. Here we have m at the midpoint, and we want to find where s is. Well, I would suggest definitely using a counting method. And here's what I mean. If we start at t and go up 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, so that's going to be 4. And then we go over 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gets us to our middle. If we just replicate that, we go up another 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over another 1, 2, 3, 4. That should end up at our S point. And we can definitely see that's going to be collinear. That feels really good. Okay, so that's 4 and 4. And so our new coordinates are going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So S here is going to be 3 and 3. Okay, and so that's the same exact level of thinking that I used here. And the same exact thinking that I used here, where I'm just counting the halfway, and then I'm doubling it to get to my new point. And we can do that with this last example as well. If I'm starting at t, which is 5, 4, and I'm traveling to my midpoint, well, I have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I have to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if I just do that a second time, I should end up at my new point. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then there's going to be my S point. And again, perfectly collinear. In terms of coordinates, let's see, we have -5, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then -4. Okay. So this is a trickier part of midpoints, but actually, if you have good knowledge and like are comfortable with it, it actually turns into a faster way to deal with these midpoints. Okay, and so that is the final page of your review. Guys, if you powered through all of that, there is no reason, if you can do all these problems, there's no reason why you shouldn't walk into this test and walk away with 100. I want to put that out there. Like, we're not hiding anything on this test. This is all very straightforward. Everything we're asking you to practice is on the test somewhere. There's nothing else on the test. Like I said, we're not trying to surprise anybody right now in this year of COVID. And so if you put in the time, I guarantee you, you are going to do well on this test. Okay, so appreciate you guys watching these. Practice up, study with each other, do well. All right, see you guys around.